Back in August, the last conversation I had with my son the night before he passed away was you got your whole life ahead of you, man. Anything you want to do, it's all in front of you. You got plenty of time. Well, turns out he didn't. And oftentimes, you and I as Christians think in our relationship with God, we have plenty of time to do what we want to do. We often tell God that, you know what, one of these days, I'm going to step out and I'm going to do that. One of these days, I'm going to talk to him about God. One of these days, I'm going to open up my home more. One of these days, when I get more time, I'm going to do more for him. One of these days, when I have more resources and have more money, I'm going to give more back to him. I'm going to give more back to others. And the issue is we go on and on and on and live our life day after day, month after month, and oftentimes go back to those promises and go back to, if this opportunity ever comes my way, I'm going to take full advantage of it. If God ever, one of these days I'm going to do this for God. One of these days I'm going to drop this and get rid of this because I know he don't want it in my life. One of these days I'm going to do that. And we all talk about something that might happen later on. Well, the issue is that Romans 14:12 is something we all have in common, whether you're a believer today or not, whether this is your first time ever in church or you've been in church your whole life. There's one verse that you and I, many verses, but this verse especially, we have in common. Romans 14:12 says that every single person, every one of us, will stand before God eyeball to eyeball one day and give an account for every second that we lived on this earth. Every second. We'll give an account for every dollar that we had in our pocket. We'll give an account for every resource that he's given us. We're going to give an account for every relationship that we've been involved in. We're going to give an account for every opportunity that came in front of us that we took or we didn't take for him. But every single second of our lives that he's given us, we will have to give an account for. Today we're going to talk about stepping out. We're going to talk about looking at two different stories in the New Testament. They're very similar, and about stepping out and actually getting to a point in our Christian life where on our way to work, we can honestly say, God, here I am, arms wide open, ready to make an impact. What do you want me to do today? On your way to class, on your way to school, you can honestly whisper in your mind and in your heart, God, I don't know what this looks like, but here I am, arms wide open. I don't know about the opportunities that are ahead of me today, but God, I want to be that person. I want to be that person that actually says to you and means it, here I am, I'm stepping out. God, whatever it is you want me to do, if I know you want me to do it, I know I got the resources and the strength to pull it off, whatever it is. In stepping out for God, oftentimes it can mean many different things. For some of us, it's stepping out means you're going to slow down and drop some things in your life because you're way too busy. And there's a lot of things going on in your life that are really busy things, but they're not productive things. They just keep you busy. And for some of us today, it's about stepping out and looking at our lives and going, you know what? There's a lot of things going on in my life that keep me very busy and very tired, but I don't really know how productive I am. For some of us today, about stepping out, it's about something in our life that God wants us to drop, get rid of, take out of our life once and for all. It's a relationship, it's a habit, it's an addiction, it's something in our life that God said, I want you today to start the journey of getting this out of your life once and for all. You've thought about it, you've talked about it, you've prayed about it, you've told God one day, and God is saying today is the day to step out and drop this in your life once and for all. For some of us, it's about spending more time with those people around us, stopping and listening to people that we are in contact with every day instead of just, hey, how you doing, talk about whatever. For some of us, it's slowing down and listening to somebody that we haven't listened to in a long time. For some of us, it's about spending more time with our family and not just around our family. I don't know what those nudges are that God is nudging you or driving you to do. But that's what we're going to talk about today, because there are opportunities around us. Oftentimes we're waiting on that opportunity from God. Boy, when this comes, when I get this, when I have more of this, I'm going to use that. And what God is saying today, part of stepping out, is looking around you where you are now, because there are opportunities all around us to be faithful. All around us. And not waiting on that opportunity one day when we think it's going to come. But there's two stories that are very similar in the New Testament I want to talk about real quick. First one's in Luke chapter 5. You're very familiar with both of them, so we're going to just talk about them real quick. Luke chapter 5 basically is a time when Jesus was teaching by the shore. He began teaching there, and these guys had been fishing all night. The disciples, some of them soon to be disciples, been fishing all night, and they had caught nothing. Now, when you and I go fishing and catch nothing, that's not a big deal. Disappointing, but not a big deal. When they go fishing and catch nothing, that's their life. It's a big deal. So they come in obviously disappointed, obviously tired. They came into the shore, and Jesus says, hey, go back out, put your nets back out in deeper water. Well, you know, I'm sure Pete kind of says it, but there's more thinking it. Hey, we've been doing this all night. I know you're Jesus and miracle guy and all that, but we're the fishermen. We've been doing this all night. And we've caught nothing. But because it's you, Jesus, we're going to do this. So you know the story. They go back out in the deep. They catch so much fish, the nets begin to break. They've got to get other people. They've got to get other people to come and help them get all this stuff in. And it's a big, big deal. And they've got fish stories to tell for the rest of their life. And they're ready to go. They've got so much fish and so much opportunity to support their families and all this kind of stuff, all in one instance, because they believe what Jesus told them to do. The other story you see about is in Matthew chapter 14. Jesus has been teaching again. He goes off by himself. The disciples go out in this boat, and not any kind of boat. I mean, this wasn't a yacht. This was a boat probably made by them, and we're out there in the water, and the storm is coming, the waves are crashing, and these guys get terrified. I mean, again, this wasn't, a boat that protected you very easily. I'm sure that this was a scary deal to be out in one of those small boats. All of a sudden, they see this figure walking toward them. Get a little closer, and they begin to think it's Jesus. And Pete, once again, you got to love Pete, because he's always willing to step out. Sometimes he steps out and steps into it, but sometimes he steps out and he follows God. This time, Peter says, okay, hey, Jesus, if that's you, I want to walk out there too. You know the story. Peter begins to walk out there, and for some reason, Peter begins to look at, hey, what am I doing? I'm walking on water. What am I doing? There's storms all around me. What am I doing? All these waves. And he begins to look at all that stuff, and then Peter begins to sink and prays probably the most genuine prayer he's ever prayed in his life. Help me, Jesus. And Jesus gets him up, gets him back in the boat, and Peter and the disciples say, truly, you are the Son of God. Truly, you are who you say you are. So looking at these two stories, I want to talk just for a few minutes about stepping out. And Danny made fun of me a few weeks ago for never having any notes. I want you to know I have notes, and I guarantee there's probably a lot more people that wish I had more notes every time I speak. But anyway, we're going to talk about this real quick. But first of all, before you step out, before you and I begin to feel those nudges in our life, those God-driven things that He wants us to do, understand, first of all, we have to make sure it's a God-driven thing. Because we can step out and do a lot of things. Doesn't mean they're going to be right. We can step out and take risk all day long, but it doesn't mean they're God-driven, God-nudged things for us to do. One of the key components of both of these stories was that Jesus said for them to do it in each story. Jesus said, go put your nets on the other side. Jesus said, come to me. So we see in both stories, these were God-driven things. These were Jesus-commanded things. A few weeks ago, we talked about spending time alone with God. One of those elements in spending time alone with God is you begin to get to know Him. Your heart and your mind lines up with His, and you begin to know when He nudges you or drives you towards certain things, or nudges you or drives you to leave certain things. You begin to know that. You begin to develop that relationship with him. So in each situation, it's got to be clear and understood. Jesus drove both of these situations. It's not just about stepping out and doing something different. It's not just about stepping out and taking some kind of risk. It's about stepping out and doing something God is nudging you or driving you to do. And you know it in your heart, it's something he's telling you. It's something he's nudging you toward. And then you begin to step out. The second thing we need to understand is each and every one of us were created unique, and we are in unique opportunities. Every one of us in this room were created uniquely, and we have unique opportunities everywhere we go. Listen, in Psalms 139 it says, we were fearfully and wonderfully made by God. You may not think that, you may not feel that, but I promise you, God is telling you today, you are fearfully and wonderfully made in the eyes of God. He took his hands, it tells us, and knit you together in your mother's womb, and you are unique and you are special. Now, with that, that means that God put you together the way he wanted you to be, and he put you that way because there are people going to be along your path in your life that only you, or mainly you, can impact in an incredible way. It is no accident that you work where you work. It is no accident that you go to school where you go to school. It is no accident that you are around the people that you are around on a daily basis, because he put you together and he put those situations together and those people around you because he knew before you were ever born, he knew how to put you together to make an impact in people's lives where you are. So oftentimes we want to talk about, oh, if I were there. Oh, if I lived here. Oh, if I had this. Oh, if I just knew them. Oh, if I could go over here. Look, God uniquely made you. He uniquely put you where you are. He put your talents, your skills, your personality, everything together, because where you are is where you can make the greatest impact in people's lives. Pure and simple. And part of your stepping out is the ability to understand that it's you that can mainly or maybe only make the impact where you are. In each of these stories, Jesus knew all about fishermen. He knew all about how to push their buttons. He knew all about what would make an impact in their life. He knew all about the situations. He knew all about the fact that they came in that night or that morning having caught nothing all night long. He knew how disappointed they would be. He knew their feelings. He knew their mindset. That's why he did what he did. But they had to step out and obey him. And so when we talk about stepping out, uniquely you are created and uniquely you are placed anywhere and everywhere you go. Now, oftentimes I'm guilty of this, you're guilty of this. We want to talk about that opportunity when it comes down the road. We want to talk about what could be. We want to talk about what might be. We want to talk about if I ever get this opportunity, if this ever happens to me, boy, I'm going to. And we talk about all these things that we would do. Listen, back to Romans 14:12. I'm not going to be able to say to God, hey, God, listen, if you'd have given me more money while I was here, I'd have given a whole lot more away. He's going to look at me and say, no, what did you do with what I gave you? God, if you'd have given me a bigger house, I'd have had a whole lot more people over. What did you do with what I gave you? God, if I could have worked anywhere else where people were it was a little easier, or maybe people were a little more friendlier, then I promise you, I would have made more of an impact in people's lives. What did you do with the place I put you? What did you do with that? And so oftentimes we're looking for this opportunity. Oftentimes we're waiting on this to happen. Oftentimes if this were to occur and this were to line up, man, I would step out and I would serve you like you've never seen before. Oftentimes when it comes to stepping out, we're always looking out here and we fail to look around us the incredible opportunities God's placed right around us. And that's why Jesus did these things. That's why he was about doing where he was, because that's where they lived their life. They lived their lives on the shore. They lived their lives in the water. They lived their lives fishing. That's why Jesus was there, because he wanted them to see you need to make an impact in the world that you live in every day. And when it comes to stepping out, it's always going to be about stepping out in the opportunities in the world that you live in right now. It's not going to be about someday down the road. It's always going to be about now, where you are now. Now, understand when it's stepping out, there's always going to be a setback. There's always going to be a setback. And many of us have experienced these setbacks. God is nudging us towards something. Or God is nudging us to drop something in our life, to get rid of this. And there's always a setback, and there always will be a setback, because part of the whole stepping out and doing what God wants you to do thing is about trusting him even in the midst of fear, even in the midst of not knowing what's going to happen, in the midst of rejection, in the midst of criticism. Listen, if there's no setback, there's no trust. If there's no test, there's no testimony. So in order for us to step out, it's going to have setbacks. We're going to have to overcome things in our life about being uncomfortable and being inconvenienced and just not being, used to what's going on in our life. That's all about stepping out. But that's what it's all about. It's not going to be comfortable. It's not going to be. And listen, some of the criticism you're going to feel, some of the criticism you're going to hear, oftentimes is going to be from the people closest to you. Listen, if you drop something in your life that has been comfortable to you for a long time, but you know it's wrong, it's dragging you down, you're never going to make the impact God wants. You know he's not pleased with that, and you start to drop that in your life, there's going to be criticism. And a lot of times, when we step out for God, the main criticism that you're going to feel is from the people closest to you. And that's the way it is. Criticism, fear of rejection, fear of failure, because we think of success being if I step out, oh man, all these great things are going to happen. They might. But stepping out is not about success in my eyes. Stepping out is about obedience. And that's what God wants more than anything. But there's going to be setbacks. There's going to be things in your life that come when you drop something he wants you to drop, or when you step out to do something he wants you to do. There are always going to be setbacks. And just because there's setbacks doesn't mean you can't accomplish it. And when you have setbacks, understand when you step out for him and you follow a God-driven nudge in your life to do something that you've not done before, or it's been a long time since you've done, when you step out to do that, understand something. You're going to be, most of the time, probably alone. There's not going to be a lot of people follow you. But here's what we've got to decide. Would you rather be in a crowd, not following God, or all by yourself, stepping out and doing what he wants you to do? That's what it comes down to. Because the Bible tells us to follow him, Luke 9:23, a verse that not a lot of people like to talk about, not a lot of churches like to talk about. But Luke 9:23 said, if you're going to follow me, Joel, you've got to deny Joel. You've got to pick up your cross daily and follow me. That means there's going to be setbacks often, because Joel, guess what? It's not about you. And most of what we fight when we fight God about stepping out, most of what we fight is about me. I don't have time. I don't have this, and I don't want to do this, and this messes up my schedule. God's looking at us going, hey, who gave you your schedule? Who gave you the very breath that you have right now? Who gave you the skills? Who gave you the talent? Who gave you the opportunity that you have right now? It's not about me. Never has been. But I make it about me. And that's what causes me not to step out. That's what causes me to hang on to things in my life that I shouldn't hang on to, because I make it about me. Luke 9:23, it is the crux of the Christian life. It is the crux when he says, look, you got to deny yourself, pick up your cross, and follow me daily. It's the central point to how we should live our life. And all those things that we come up to, all those things that we come out with about fear of rejection and not having courage and I can't do this and I'm not equipped and I don't have the resources, they all are real and they all sound good. But at the end of the day, there's never going to be a time that God's going to drive you or nudge you towards something or drive you or nudge you away from something that he has not totally in advance prepared you to handle, ever. Ever. And there's never going to be a time that God drives you or nudges you to something or drives you or nudges you away from something that if you follow him, that your life won't be better. Because God's way is always better. Always better than my way. Now, 3 or 4 things real quick, and we're done. First of all, what is this whole stepping out thing about? What is this whole, these 2 stories, what is this whole stepping out and following God thing about? Number 1, stepping out, following those God-driven nudges. Number 1 is always, always about obedience. It's always about obedience. We can make it look good and we can pretty it up and we can say all kinds of words, but the bottom line is when I think about it, just me, I'm just talking about me. When I think about it, I think about, okay, God is driving me toward this or nudging me toward this, or God is driving or nudging me away from this, and I don't step out or I don't drop it. I can come up with all kinds of descriptive words, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to obedience. Either I'm going to follow him or I'm not. You see, the Bible is literally glued together with people who either followed God or didn't. Literally. Either it's made up of people who followed God and experienced blessings in their life or chose not to follow him and reap the consequences of that. It all comes down to obedience. And I can paint it up, I can make it look good, I can come up with all these justified words like inconvenient and I don't have the resources and I don't have the time and I can come up with all these things and I can get lots of people to agree with me. But at the end of the day, it's all about obedience. Pure and simple. I either choose to deny myself and obey him, or I choose to continue to do things my way. All comes down to that. Peter had a decision to make. He could go on out in the deep, or he could not. He could come out on the water, experience Jesus like he's never experienced him before. Peter gets a bad rap about coming out there and sinking. Everybody's like, you hear people tell this story and they go, and Peter took his eyes off Jesus. Well, he may have, but he's the only one that got out of the boat. There's a lot of them that stayed in the boat. But at least Peter stepped out and started walking on the water towards Jesus. Yeah, we may say he failed, but in my opinion, Peter that day, he said, truly, you are the Son of God. Peter was a winner that day because he got out. He stepped out. And that's what God's looking for, obedience. Obedience. The second thing, stepping out is always about impacting other people. Stepping out is always about impacting other people. You see, When you and I step out, we struggle internally. The courage. We don't have all the resources. I can't do that. I can't talk to that person. I can't listen to that person. We have all these internal battles. I can't drop that. It's been a part of my life. I'm almost dependent. I can't get rid of it. I can't stop it. We have these internal battles. But understand something. That's normal about stepping out. We're going to battle internal. That's why God gives us the strength to overcome those battles. But understand something. Once we've decided, while we're battling those internal battles, understand that every time you and I step out, or every time you and I drop something He wants us to drop, understand something. There are other people that are hanging in the balance, ready to be impacted by you. There are people around you that desperately needs to see God at work in somebody else's life. There are people around you that are struggling that desperately needs to know somebody who's struggling but yet continuing to move on because of God's strength in their life. You see, there are Christians that go to work every single day. There are students that go to school every single day, and there are people around them that doesn't even know they're a God follower. Doesn't even know. We're no different than anybody else. You see, the whole thing about stepping out, one of God's goals about us stepping out is we become contagious to other people. And when you and I become contagious, people want what we have. They want to know somebody who's human, that's struggling, but yet keeping going on because of God's strength in their life. They want to know that people who have skin on them have struggles and battles and disappointments and sin in their life and mistakes and failure. But because God is in their life and directing their life, they are continuing to move forward in their faith. People got to see that. And that's why God moves us to step out. Because as we step out, other people step out too. There are people in your world right now that are waiting on somebody to step out. They need that. There's people in your own family that you go home with today that desperately need to see you stepping out. To give them the courage to live in their world like you're living in yours. It's always about impacting somebody else. It's rarely, yes, we're going to experience things, which is a third thing, personal growth. Absolutely, we're going to experience personal growth. Absolutely. We're going to grow. As we take risk, as we follow those God-driven nudges, we're going to grow. We're going to become more like Him. We're going to know Him more. We're going to experience Him more. But at the end of the day, it's about obedience, and obedience produces growth. God wants us to step out because He knows what that will do for us. I want you to grow. I want you to know me more. I want you to experience me more than you have in your life. That's why I want you to step out. Because you'll have to trust me. You'll have to be alone. You'll have to battle those battles inside and trust me that I can help you. You're going to have to do all that. And when you do all that, you grow and you become more like me. That's what He knows. That's what He wants. And the final thing, stepping out is about glorifying God. It's about honoring Him. It's about doing something that He wants you to do. And as the ultimate father, the ultimate parent, there's nothing better than to give your son or your daughter something to do, or ask them to do something, or encourage them to do something, and they do it. There is nothing better than that as a parent. And think about God when He asks us to step out and He asks us to do something or to drop something and get rid of something in our life. It glorifies Him when we follow Him. And isn't that what it's also all about? Glorifying Him. You see, I make life about me, but it's not. There's nothing about me in this world. It should be all about him. And if I live my life the way he wants me to live, not only am I going to grow, but he's going to be glorified. He demands that. He deserves that in your life, in my life. What is it? Because I guarantee you, as we work through this message, I guarantee you, you know what those God-driven nudges and those God-driven things are in your heart that he is pushing you toward right now. Maybe has been for weeks. Maybe has been for months. You know as you sit there today what those God-driven nudges are to drop some things in your life once and for all, to get rid of them. They're toxic. They're choking your growth with God. They're choking your impact with other people. And for some of us, it's stepping out by dropping something. But for some of us, it's stepping out by following those nudges, spending more time, taking advantage of the opportunities God has around us. I don't know what it is, but there's something God's been driving you and nudging you to do. Isn't it time for you to say, you know what, God? I'm going to be the one to step out of the boat. I'm going to be the one to go out in the deep. I'm going to be the one to go ahead and follow finally what you want me to do. Starting today. No more nudges. No more of that. I'm going for it today, God. I'm going to do what you want me to do once and for all.